Welcome to Have a Life Teaching, the podcast designed for educators who are dedicated to enhancing their teaching practice and creating a positive impact on their students' lives. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the world of education, exploring a wide range of topics related to curriculum, instruction, and assessment in K-12 schools. Together, we'll learn from the brightest minds in the education field. So if you're a passionate educator who's ready to take your teaching practice to the next level, join us as we explore the exciting world of education. My name is John Shimbari, signing in and saying, let's have a life teaching. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Have a Life Teaching. Glad to have you here today. When we talk about skills students need in the 21st century, beyond even just the content that we want our students to know, we need to be preparing our students to communicate a message across mediums. So we need to really help our students not only to present and engage an audience through speech, but we do still need to help our students write and to communicate a message in writing, because you don't always have that opportunity to be engaging with someone face-to-face or visually. So I'm very excited today to have Melissa Morrison, a literacy consultant who specializes in writing. And she's going to walk us through today, not only the what of student writing, what we should be doing to help our students improve their writing, but also the why. So Melissa, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me.
So Melissa, I like to ask all my guests, how'd you get involved in education and how did writing become your thing?
So I originally was not going to get into education. My mom was a teacher for 37 years. She was still a teacher as I did end up going into the field, but I never wanted to do that. and then I just so happened to go into a job that was related to teaching. I was program analyst at a program for autistic children. And I would work one-on-one with them. And then I didn't really want to stay where I was because of the location, and a position came up in the school district where my mom was working, where we lived, as a one-on-one aide for the same purpose. And so I did go in, and lo and behold, I decided to go back to school for teaching. And so I taught first and second grade. And one of the biggest experiences that brought me towards my career was having not only training, a place called the Children's Literacy Initiative, but training from them, but also a coach. And when I had that coach, it was just the best professional development experience in my career. And I always said, I want to be you when I grow up, because I just thought I would love to bring to other teachers what she brought to me, which was validation and support and encouragement and a push, and then just best practices. And so that I had actually already started to play around with writer's workshop in my classroom before I had the training in her as a coach, but it developed even more. And then I also had the opportunity to pilot a program. It was actually units of study in writing. And I just loved it. I said, this is what I want to teach. Like, this is it. Can we just make it so there's some kind of second grade writing? And so when I did choose to leave teaching, I took a little break. I didn't really know what was going to happen. And I found myself still very interested in all things literacy, and especially writing. And I had ample time to be able to read up on everything and follow everyone. And my best friend really wanted some help in writing instruction in her classroom. And so I went in and I would help her voluntarily. And then so many other teachers were interested in help with writing, because I think, as most of us have probably experienced, there's not a lot of training in writing, I don't think. And so that just kind of pushed me to pursue it. So I got my business license and I put on my first workshop. It was all about writing instruction at my local library. And that turned into my first contract with the school. And so I've been doing it since then. And I love helping teachers to realize that it's not as hard as you think, and just making it so much more enjoyable and successful for students.
And I'm glad you also mentioned the Children's Literacy Initiative, because they are a great organization providing great coaching support. So, and I'm glad that they coached you and that you're, now leading this work yourself. So with that in mind, why do we need to be focusing on this as a distinct skill with our students?
As you mentioned, we need to know how to write and communicate with each other effectively. I can't imagine someone who will not have to use writing in their life at some time, and not just when they go on to higher levels of school, but in their job in order to deal with a lawyer or a medical company or what have you. So we need it, but not only do we need it, but it is so helpful for us to be able to communicate in that way. But being able to write and have the opportunity to practice writing is also going to just develop and strengthen your thinking. Writing and not just speaking is actually developing your brain and helping you to learn. And as I mentioned before, these things aren't happening as far as teaching students how to develop their writing skills and to actually like it and to understand why it's important. So I just want to be able to bring writing back into the forefront because it is so connected to reading. It shouldn't be so separate as well. So I think reading is always a big topic, but writing not so much.
I love what you just said there, Melissa. Particularly two things really struck out. And one of them is definitely that we have to be getting our students or helping our students to like it, quote unquote, getting them to enjoy the process of writing. Number one, because like you said, they're going to be doing it their whole lives. And two, to connect it to the reading that students are doing. I also coach around literacy. I'm a big fan of, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, of using annotation code when students read something. But then after they read it and use an annotation code, I'm a big fan of them having them summarize what they read using a written summary frame. So you are speaking to the conversion, that's for sure. With that in mind, getting students to like the process of writing, and then using the process of writing to help our students develop their strategic thinking. What does that look like in a K-2 classroom versus a middle grades classroom versus a high school classroom?
I have to say, I think that if what I'm about to say isn't already happening, it's not any different in any of those classrooms. And that would be making sure that the writing that they're doing is authentic. That's number one. Well, they have to understand the meaning behind it or behind why writing is something important for them, right? And even at the lowest level, they can see writing out in the world, and then that they get to write writing that's out in the world. They're not just writing to a prompt, and they're not just answering your question, and they're not just doing what everyone else is doing or what you tell them to do. It's actually something that they would see out there, that they have some control over, that they're able to have choice as much as possible, because that will create the meaning for them as well. So I think the authenticity is important across grade levels. And then I also think as a teacher, remembering that they are writers already, regardless of their level, and acknowledging them as such and accepting that. So when they are writing, you're accepting that whatever level they are on, that's where they are. That's them as a writer. And that's who you are teaching. We're not teaching the product. We're not trying to get a certain product. We're trying to teach the student and move them on. And so we need to let them write at their ability. So in a lower grade level, to me, that means not everyone is writing together. Not everyone is producing a sentence. Not everyone is producing two sentences. It also means not everyone is going to need or want to use the same graphic organizer. It means that not everyone is going to want to answer the same question about their summer. And then in the older grades, I think it's very similar in that they don't all plan the same way. They don't all write with the same skill level, and that's okay, because we just need to know them as writers and be able to move them forward.
I love how you are using writing in a differentiated way based on where students are instructionally in their ability to, as you were mentioning, craft sentences or not crafting sentences at the lower level. But I also heard, and what resonated with me is when you said, not everyone has to be producing the same thing. So I'm asking this or saying this more because I'm wondering, based on that and based on what you just said, obviously, if there is choice, hopefully students will like to write more. So when you say like it, how we get students to like writing, in addition to choice, or if you want to, Melissa, talk more about choice in writing,
Mhm.
How do we get students to like writing?
Mhm. Well, we're not always going to get everyone to want to be a writer. That is for sure. But I think that not just the choice, which is huge, and it's a part of it being authentic. I mean, how can it be authentic to them if they don't get to decide what they're doing, what they're writing about? How, whether or not they're going to nix this writing and move on to another one. So I think remembering that they're people just like we are, and so try to imagine yourself in the situation that you're putting them in. Would you want to do it? Would you like doing it? So just remembering that they might have actually some ideas that you don't even know about, so you need to see it. You need to see what they can do. And I think that also comes back to, if you don't make everyone do the same thing or plan the same way or have the same product, that's one of the things that makes kids not like writing, I think, because if you're pushing me to go too far and therefore not acknowledging where I am, which means you don't respect what I'm able to do, or you're just making this really hard for me. And if you're limiting me and making everyone work at the same pace, but I can go much faster, or you're making me fill out this organizer and I could add so much more to this in my writing, I'm not going to like that either. I think it's all connected in the choice and keeping it all the same and not being real. And I think it comes back a little bit to teacher control around just being able to feel like I can manage this. And I think again, it's about that product. Like, this is what I think this needs to look like, instead of worrying about teaching the writers themselves.
So let me ask or throw out a scenario there, right? Where, often as a coach myself, I'll hear, yeah, this is great, giving students choice, but I still have a curriculum to follow.
Mhm.
There is still standards that my students need to meet when
Mhm.
it comes to reading and writing and
Mhm.
literacy.
Mhm.
So it's all fine and dandy that we're going to acknowledge and value where students are, whether they're, below writing proficiency level where they should be or above. And it's all great that we're going to give them choice. But at the end of the day, I still have writing standards and reading standards. I still have those at the end of the day. And that's how I'm evaluated as an educator. So can you give an example of how you can differentiate the writing process and you can be bringing in, whether or not you're differentiating by instructional level or by interest level? How
Mhm.
can we do the things, Melissa, you're mentioning while still ensuring that we're meeting those writing and reading standards?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I know that in the upper grades, time is, well, time's always a problem. Time's a problem for everybody, right? Everywhere, every grade level. And I know, especially in the upper grades, 6th, 7th, and 8th, 11th through 12th, they have those short periods of time, and you think, I don't have time to do any of this. And then if there's not a separate writing block and it's just literacy all together, you worry about being able to get everything done. And therefore it's like, okay, we're just going to do this. I would point out that, yes, I know there are standards we need to meet. But if you don't know what your students are capable of doing, so that's like part of being able to move them forward or get them to that standard, right? If you don't know where they are, you won't be able to move them forward anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And also the idea that they enjoy writing and feel like writers and find it meaningful. If you don't have that, you're never meeting that standard. So that foundation has to be there anyway. And so choice is one way to be able to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that every day, all year long, they will always have a choice of everything that they could do, but there are ways to incorporate choice. So there are writing units that could be genre based. And so when you are doing the work with them, they would be writing in that genre. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then perhaps there would be another short unit where you don't have to choose a genre, or perhaps you just let them know there's going to be several genres throughout the year. And so you will still have choice of topic. You're still going to have choice of when you decide to quit writing something or to start with the middle and not the beginning, or, so there's so many ways to incorporate that choice and to focus a unit around something and still be able to offer choice.
So, Melissa, then what do you think, or how would we determine if a student is a successful writer? Like, what do we hope to accomplish
Mm-hmm.
in terms of specific skills when it comes to writing and our students?
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, I have not been asked this questions before. So thank you. So I think that just going back to it again, you know that they are successful if they have the ability to engage in writing and to feel as though they have something to say, and therefore part of being able to get it down and continue on, like, and go through the process. So if they understand that we generate ideas and we draft our writing pieces and we revise and we edit. So if they're able to do that, if they're just able to engage, I think that's the foundational, success criteria. And then if they're just able to continue to try things and learn from things. Now, yes, you can compare it to standards, although I think the standards don't provide as much as they could as far as like what successful writing could look like. So you can certainly compare it to standards. And I know a lot of times it gets into grading wise, we worry about what the grade is going to look like. That's like the last thing I want to think about. But I know as a consultant that comes in, I have to worry about it. Just like in reading, there's a difference between seeing or having an idea of success and then having an idea of like grade level achievement. So I feel like just to clarify, I feel like those are two different things. So for me, the success comes in the things that I just spoke of and just being able to continue to learn and want to try new things, and then just to grow in their volume, in their skill level, their ability to incorporate writing into their lives and see how helpful also it could be for, like you were saying, connecting it to the reading that they do, or any learning that they are doing.
So as a consultant out there, every day in schools, you see a lot of writing instruction. What have you seen as being the successes?
One of the best things I can ever hear is, wow, my kids really love to write. I had a teacher just the other day, I had worked with her last year and now I'm working with another grade level this year. And she said, I've never had classes that enjoy writing. And last year they all wanted to write. And several teachers would say they ask when it's time to write. There's no more crying. There's no more, and moaning and groaning, and that they enjoyed it and that the teacher enjoyed it. And I think the reason for it was that the students were able to be writers. They were able to just do it. They were able to write at their own level. They were able to experience the teaching of writing, the modeled writing and the mentor texts and the connection to reading, and just being able to have, like we had talked about, that choice and that let's see who you are and how I can help you.
And then the flip side of that question, I suppose, is, so that was an example of a teacher who's really engaging their students around the writing process. What advice would you give, Melissa? What tips would you give a teacher who's not yet there? For a teacher who's still struggling in getting students to like the writing process, are there 2 or 3 tips that you can give to get them going in that direction?
Absolutely. I would say that first, let them write something on their own and see what you got. Figure out what's happening with them as writers. I actually had a grade level that I was about to work with this year. At the end of last year, I asked them to do just that. We gave them, I don't like to call it a prompt, but like a direction of what the students were able to write. And they did it completely on their own. And they had never done that before. And what I heard from them was, wow, I didn't realize this student could write like that. And so if she didn't know that, then she was keeping them back and they could have done so much more. And so the first thing I would say to do is figure out what they can do. So you say, hey, I want you to write me something today. I want you to tell me a story or teach me about something. So you could do that in the lower grade levels. In the upper grade levels, like, I want you to write me an informational piece, pick a topic. What do you know a lot about? And just see what happens. Now, you might have those students who are like, I don't know what to write. Well, guess what? That's the first thing you're going to help them with. And part of that is going to be possibly confidence. And so that gives you an idea of something, even if they don't write anything. And then the ones that are writing, you get to see, okay, they stayed on topic, or great, they have a structure here. Or in the lower grade, they don't know how to write all their letters or whatever it might be. So I think the first thing is just see what they can do. And then that kind of parlays into the second tip, which is your greatest resource for writing instruction is your student. Because as you continue to allow them to write and see if they can come up with ideas and see how they plan, you start to learn the things that you need to teach them. So that is no program, just some paper, some pens. and talk to them and see what's going on in their brain about writing. And then all the while encouraging and showing them how wonderful it is. And, being a writer yourself, and all of those things are things to just kind of get started.
So playing devil's advocate, and you
Yes.
probably know that we were going to go here because we have
Yeah.
to address this elephant in the room. Why should we even bother to teach our students to write when there's AI and AI can do it for them? Like, how does AI, how do you see, Melissa, AI affecting how we teach writing and why we should continue to teach writing, or should we continue to teach writing? How do you see AI affecting the writing process?
This is such a scary question. I know, I just want to ignore it, I guess. And so I know I can't do that. But I had a brilliant colleague of mine say that it's just like when they invented the telephone or the cell phone or anything else that you could name. It's just one more thing that we need to learn to accept and to understand, and just accept that it is there to help us in some way. And so that's what I want us to think about. Like, how can it help us? And then why do we still want to teach writing? Well, there's so many things that we could say, well, why would oh gosh, I'm trying to think of a good example, but why would I do that if this can do it for me, right? Do we want to be a society who doesn't know how to write? do we want to be that? And then the lower grades, students aren't doing that. Students might eventually, it'll get bigger and they can kind of use it, but not everyone is going to go and use Chat GPT. They still need to know how to work in the world. And I know I can imagine it being difficult in the upper grades where students do know how to use it, and they can actually say, oh, could you make this essay sound more like an 8th grader wrote it? And then it will do that, which is amazing. So I'm sure it's going to be difficult in the upper grade levels. And I can't tell you that I know exactly the way around it, but I do know that we need to know how to read and how to write. That's just it. I don't know what else to say.
No, and I agree. And I, in my coaching, sometimes will suggest, well, yeah, it might make some writing easier, but that doesn't stop us. And I think this gets to your point, Melissa, about the need to analyze what actually is written, to analyze what is actually stated in those prose. And if we become an intellectual or non-intellectual society, we will lose the ability to know whether or not AI or AI generated text is correct, incorrect, the messages it's sending. And that's what's scary about AI, that we could potentially lose those skills at evaluation, analysis, or even the ability to determine whether or not what is writing is moral. I think right there is a reason why we need to continue teaching not only writing, but reading comprehension and analysis. Well, there's nothing that says students can't write about writing or getting meta or thinking of metacognition. AI, at least as it stands now, isn't really able to do that. Nor at this point does AI have the ability to write with your personal experience in mind.
As you were talking, that's what started to come into my head, that do I want something? Do we want to raise a society who doesn't care that it comes from us, that it's really speaking our identity, as you said, and our truth? And even if someday it can do that, do we want to? It's kind of like when you think about texting or emailing, and sometimes I'm just like, I just want to write it down and I want them to see my writing or hear my voice or what have you, because I want it to be from me. And so we don't want to lose that identity, like you were saying. And that's exactly what would happen if we just didn't learn how to write on our own and we just let it do it. But also what you said about, we can look at it and say, what do we think about this, and analyze it, and how would we have written that differently? I love the points you made.
So Melissa, what did we not talk about that you think is really important to mention to the listeners of this podcast about writing?
I kind of mentioned it, I guess, but I was going to say, what do teachers need in order to create successful writers? And I think it's you and them. And eventually you might want to really look into some programs or professional books, and there are many out there that can be super helpful, but I am certainly learning that in order to get to, students to get into the upper levels and be successful writers, it has to begin with enjoying writing and being able to engage in it. And so, how that can happen. Like you do. All you need to do is start, like I said, you let them write, see what you got, see what their attitudes are towards writing. Just like we always talk about reading inventories, you can do your own writing inventory. How do they feel about it? And then figure out how you can help to move them on so that they do like it, they are engaged. And then, as I said, they are your greatest resource. You can start with basics until you're ready, as far as the teaching points and everything, until you're ready to move on and you are able to come up with some different things and collaborate with others, with other teachers about what they're noticing and what they're doing. And be brave. What do you need? You need to be brave and patient with yourself. Like just try something else, try something different and see what you get.
So where can people find out more information about you and the work that you do?
You could find me at teaching2transform.com. There are 2 little dashes on either side of the word two. And Facebook, Instagram, I'm not there as much often, but I am there. And then on LinkedIn as well. I also have a podcast that is called Getting Students to Write. And so I would love to be able to hear your feedback on that as well. But yes, that's where you can find me.
Thanks for that, Melissa. I actually look forward to going to your podcast and learning more about the specific things that teachers can do in this regard. So thank you.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. And I look forward to more episodes of yours as well.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you for listening today. I hope you got some great tips that you can bring back into your teaching. Remember, have a life teaching without sacrificing your own. Also, don't forget to subscribe and be well.